first large event we've had in this room with partners from the community since March of 2020. So welcome, everyone. Welcome to, thank you. Well, welcome to Columbus Public Health, and I am Dr. Mashika Roberts, the Health Commissioner for Columbus Public Health. It's great to see so many of you here this morning. I'm pleased to welcome you as our stakeholders, our partners, and our elected officials that we have joining us today. But we are all here for one reason: to help undesign the red line and address racism as a public health crisis. As you just saw in this exhibit, the structural racism created by the largest social engineering project in our country has lasting impacts on the health and safety of our community today. Our work together to undesign the red line on behalf of our community has never been more important than it is right now. So let's begin with some of our special partners who are helping us in this important work. First, please help me welcome our strongest ally and public health partner, Columbus Mayor Andrew J. Ginther. Mayor Ginther.
Good morning, and thank you, Dr. Roberts. I was thinking it's our first large gathering here since everything in the world changed in March of 2020. And I was thinking about there were very few people in the room who helped me make some of the most difficult decisions I've ever made as mayor. And I thank God Mashika Roberts was by my side, helping me through one of the most difficult we wouldn't be where we are today without her leadership, her willingness to lean into science, what was in the best interest of the public. And she is a very bright example. She and her team, because she would be the first to tell you it is her team, the amazing team at Public Health who has helped this community weather one of the greatest challenges in our lifetimes. Public health has never been more important. Thanks, Dr. Roberts, for hosting this important event. On behalf of our community, I want to thank our Congresswoman, the best Congresswoman in all of America, Joyce Beatty, for making time for us today. And of course, Councilmember Favor, who's an incredible advocate for public health on our council here. We declared racism a public health crisis back in March of 2020, before the pandemic, before George Floyd, one of the few communities in America that was willing to acknowledge something we all know to be true. Some in America and even in this community so struggle with saying it out loud, acknowledging it that. And we've even seen great strides in the last couple of years that some folks seem to be hedging their bets on these days in corporate boardrooms and state legislatures and places around America, higher education. But it's important for us today to recommit to this work. Racism is a public health crisis, and it is incumbent upon us not to just acknowledge it, but to own the remedy. And that's part of what today's work is all about, a call to action to ensure that the future of this community is big enough and bright enough for everyone, and to make informed, thoughtful investments through the lens of equity in all that we do. I'm pleased to join all of these incredible folks as we talk about this Red Line exhibit. It's a stark reminder of the scope of redlining racism and people of color, and quite honestly, something that has undermined all of our success and held us back. It wasn't just our neighbors in King Lincoln, Driving Park, and Bronzeville, but they were torn apart by federal government policy. At the same time, financial institutions actively discriminated in their lending practices. Freeways followed and cut through once vibrant communities simply because of the color of the people who live there. These were intentional acts. They hurt entire families, neighborhoods, and businesses, the very core, life, and fabric of these communities. And the damaging effects of structural racism are still felt to this day. That's why I'm here with all of you, to join you in rededicating our energy and focus to reversing these devastating trends. It's our duty to acknowledge and address racism head on and to treat these disparities with the urgency and honesty they deserve. The City of Columbus is leading the way, and we are on the forefront of making our community more and more equitable. We've already made bold investments and contributed significant resources, and we're continuing to do so. Expanding safe and affordable housing, access to healthy, nutritious foods, infant care and infant vitality, good-paying jobs, safe neighborhoods, green spaces, recreation activity, enrichment, and more. But so much of this starts with doing more to ensure that all of our neighbors are empowered to lead safe, healthy, and rewarding lives. We know that change won't happen overnight, but we remain steadfast in our determination nonetheless. That's because we have the collective talent, grit, and resources to reverse this great and persisting injustice. It's all hands on deck. I'll take everyone working together to ensure that all people, communities, and neighborhoods share equally in our city's success. So I encourage you to roll up your sleeves and dive in with us to see how we can and we will make a meaningful difference. I think it's important for us to rededicate ourselves as the national conversation seems to have waned a bit around equity. Folks are second-guessing their commitment. And it shouldn't be a surprise to us. We look back at American history, there have been huge historic events where there has been a recommitment to equity, to fairness, to inclusion, to diversity. But oftentimes in American history, there have been one step forward and two steps back. And you can look back past post-Civil War with Reconstruction, waves of immigration that came to America. So many examples. Columbus is going to be different. We're not backing down, we're not stepping away, we're doubling down, and we're going all in. And as long as I'm the mayor of this city, equity and dealing with racism as a public health crisis will be a top priority. But I need your help, your engagement, your leadership, your voice, your advocacy, and to continue to push each and every one of us, whether you're a part of higher education, the private sector, government. It is going to require all of us to change the trajectory to benefit all of us. Thank you for being here today, and thanks for your commitment to this work.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Now you all see why he's our #1 champion. We appreciate him. Thanks for your commitment and support and all the work and to address racism as a public health crisis. Our next speaker this morning is another strong partner for public health. Please welcome Columbus City Council Member Shayla Favor. Councilmember Favor.
Good morning. Oh, we off to a bad start. Good morning. My name is Shayla Favor, and I have the honor of serving as chair of Columbus City Council's Housing, Criminal Justice and Judiciary, and Health and Human Services committees. And I often say that what lies in the intersection of all three of those committees are our historically marginalized communities that have been disproportionately impacted by policies like the one we have gathered here today to discuss. First, I want to thank Dr. Roberts and the Columbus Public Health team for hosting this powerful exhibit in our community. We in Columbus know all too well the profound inequities that have resulted from the practice of redlining. In 2020, as Mayor Ginther indicated, the city of Columbus and Franklin County declared racism to be a public health crisis. At the heart of this declaration has to be the acknowledgement of the reality of systemic racism, the complex interaction of policies, procedures, laws, and institutions that have created disparities in the criminal justice system, employment, healthcare, education, and housing. The manifestation of these disparities can be identified through the examination of the racial wealth gap, where here in Columbus, residents of color are in greater debt and have less wealth than the city's white residents. According to the Financial Empowerment Roadmap, the median household income for Black households in Columbus is $35,569, which is 40% less than that of white households. In Columbus, 33% of Black households and 31% of Hispanic households have zero new wealth, whereas 17% of households have zero new wealth, white households. If we examined the inequities in healthcare, which have been highlighted by the COVID-19 pandemic, we would see that Black and Latino people were disproportionately affected by the coronavirus, being 3 times more likely to become infected and twice as likely to die from the virus as compared to white people, which in part is contributed to the fact that the largest share of underlying chronic health conditions, diabetes, heart disease, obesity, rests with people of color, and also in part because this same community makes up the population that falls into the essential worker category, the category where working from home was not an option, and where not showing up for work means that you simply did not get paid. So we simply cannot have a substantive conversation about housing and the impacts of redlining without recognizing the impact of systemic racism and the manner in which it has seeped into every institution in our society. In fact, if we were to overlay a residential security map, otherwise known as a redlining map, over a current map of Columbus, it would clearly demonstrate the impact of redlining and other tools of discrimination, with the same redlined areas now boasting some of the highest numbers of poverty, unemployment, crime, life expectancy, and infant mortality. And while we have certainly come a far way to ensuring justice for all people, we still have so much work to do in order to undo the systemic damages of the past. This includes tearing down the remnants of these structural barriers to our housing system and our educational system, health equity, and so much more. We have to invest in traditionally marginalized communities by uplifting those who are still reeling from the impacts of redlining. We must build a Columbus whereby the zip code you live does not determine your opportunity to build equity, nor does it dictate your health outcome. And to do all of this, we must be cognizant of the history that brought us to this point where we are today. To me, this exhibit is a perfect example of acknowledging the profoundly racist policies that yielded such racial disparities, while also learning how we can chart a path forward, one that prioritizes equity and justice. Again, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to those who have made this exhibit possible. With that, it is now my honor to turn the podium back over to our Health Commissioner, Dr. Roberts.
Thank you. We appreciate you and all your support. So our next speaker probably needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce her anyway. It is my honor to have Congresswoman Joyce Beatty with us today. She does an awesome job of representing our district in DC, and she is a strong advocate of all things Columbus, particularly public health. And she's wearing public health blue today, if you didn't realize. So I thanked her for that already. But please help me in giving a warm welcome to our Congresswoman Joyce Beatty.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Roberts, for bringing us together, and certainly to our mayor. I believe that you give roses while people are serving. And while you have a long way to go, you will leave a legacy of many firsts. When you think about the global pandemic, what happened before, as you mentioned, bringing Dr. Mashika Roberts to our community and letting her set it on fire as a great partner, not only, and yes, to the federal government, where her name is not a surprise in Washington, D.C. And I think it's important I'm going to take 60 seconds of the time that you have given us, because this is not by accident that she was able to fill this room, be able with her team to put this wonderful history that we have. And traditionally, when you think about redlining, you think about what happened in this community and communities across the country in the 1920s and 30s, 40s, and 50s. But we have to remember, when you talk about redlining, it is the largest social engineering policy in this country. And Mashika has brought it to our attention how it is an attack on our public health, how it is an attack on our educational system, how it is an attack to keep us with that wealth gap, how it is an attack on those who are our seniors, those with mental health and other issues, those who are LGBTQ, and yes, Black America. And so I'm going to be unapologetic about what I'm going to say. So I'm going to tell you to strap up and get ready, because you are not in this room by accident. And when you can have a lawyer, a city council member who has dedicated her life to housing and standing up for the people, someone who is strict and stern and serious in her words when it comes to fighting for housing. So I say thank you, Shayla Favors, for the work that you have done over the years. And so why are we here? You have heard amazing words about what this redesign of redlining means from our mayor. He connected all the dots. But as I took time to read the panels and the boards, it's always important to me what the people say, and that's not us. It's the people who aren't in this room. It's the people who are on the streets. It's the people who want to be in this room and they don't know how to get in this room. Well, they said we need stricter policies. And that's personal for me, because I think it starts at the federal government. And I think we all can do more, as the mayor said, as we bring things together for this community. It's going to take all of us in this room. And as I walked in, I looked at the panel over here. It said, join the we. Well, now, that's us. We are the people that they expect us to do the redesign. And then as I looked over here, it became very personal. Many of you in this room probably were not around in 1957. There is an article that the Ohio Sentinel a writer wrote, a Black American female, a Black newspaper, that I am so proud my family had an opportunity to be a part of bringing it together. And as I read that article, as it talked about restrictive covenants, and it talked about how intentionally things were happening to keep Black people out of neighborhoods. Also in this community, we have a rich history of badness, of discrimination, of systemic racism. Not just for Black people, Jewish folks couldn't live in what's now Bexley when you go back to what happened before. Brown people and people who came from other countries weren't openly welcome, and so they carved out a community for themselves, just as we did as Black Americans. And so I come today to say this is the first of many, but this is not really the beginning. You've done great things all your life, as I read your resume, for standing up for people. It's just today that we're bringing all of us together. And I always say this phrase, and today is more intentional than ever. I always say that people listen to words. We process, we listen, but we remember stories. So as you read the boards here, I want you to remember the stories that the individuals have told. You see, in the 1950s, and I'm not ashamed to say I was around then. I'm not going to tell you how old I was then, but I was around. I can remember a white teacher saying to my parents, "You need to move because this little girl seems to be that she might be a little talented." And so my father said, "What does that mean?" See, in the 1950s, you had to go to the school where you lived. There was no lottery, there was no moving around. You went to that school. And if you are 6, 7, and 8 years old, you don't know what's in the book. Books are outdated. It's just what they're teaching you. And she said, "I was at a teacher's conference and I looked at some of the books, and they weren't the same as the white school I was teaching in to the white students." And so my father said, "Okay, so I need to move into a white neighborhood." So he came home and said, "We're going to move." He went to the bank. He couldn't get a loan. Perfect credit, had worked all his life, and it was because he was a Black man. And so he had done some work on the side for a very wealthy white man who was the owner and founder of Elder Bierman's. Biggest competition was, now we call it Lazarus, was Macy's, was Wright's department store. And as my father was building his barbecue pit in brick, he told that story to that man. And he said, "Well, why don't you just go buy a house?" Not knowing how difficult it is for a Black person. It's not that simple. So a year later, after my father worked 5 jobs, I rarely saw him. He worked in different cities. He went back to his hometown of Newark, where he could make more money for 6 months. And he came home and he said, "This time we're packing up." Mr. Bierman's went to the bank with him. And the house cost $11,000. And my father had $11,000. And we bought that house, and we were the only Black family to live in that community. And we weren't treated or welcomed like what we are today. But I think that in part changed my life, that I went to a better school. I got a different education. I won't say the school that I went to in the community didn't help me. It helped me with my inner me. But academically, the other school helped me grow. And so I tell you that story because we think of redlining as of the past. But clearly, redlining is still happening today. It is happening in healthcare, it is happening in education, by your zip code, by the way you look. How many times do we tell young kids, when you go to that job interview, pull your pants up, put on a clean shirt, comb your hair, because when people see you, we see you. And don't let anybody tell you they don't see color. That's a lie. I walk in the room and the first thing they see is a black woman with gray hair and tall and loud. They see you. But the difference is how they treat you when you leave. And we all do it. I do it. We see color. We see what people look like. And so let me bring this to a close by telling you, each of us, we have a role to play. We are at a critical point with redesigning how we want our community to look. Mayor, you mentioned 2020. In 2020, Representative Marsha Fudge and Representative Joyce Beatty, members of Congress, introduced a bill on April 17th, examining redlining in education. We actually found out that there were lending officers who were looking at your education, and even with a college education, in some of those institutions, if I walked in and they noticed that I went to an HBCU, it made a difference than if you walked in and went to The Ohio State University or Harvard or Yale or Stanford. And so thank goodness at that time, we had somebody at the Consumer Financial Bureau that understood that. He was right here from this community. And we were able to get a piece in law that helped change that. But here we are 3 years later, still talking about redlining. So today I will say to you, I will make a commitment serving on the Financial Services Committee to go back and do stronger policies, as several people in their handwriting put on the board. Because when anyone looks at America, looks at Columbus, it is an attack on all of us, and especially Black Americans. When I look lastly at my career and I look out here and I see Charles Hillman, someone else who has dedicated his life and commitment to changing public housing, to make sure that people are able to take care of themselves. Changing it, and sometimes we get stuck. And I want you to remember this. So when people want to advance housing and they want to bring people together in communities, some of us say, not in my neighborhood, not in my neighborhood. Then it becomes those people. Well, I was one of those people. I grew up in the inner city. Now, I always had a roof over my head. I don't have a sad story, but I have a Black American story. And if I could go from the inner city of a community where there were no driveways and there were no garages, to a community where I had all of that and a big backyard, and now being able to stand on the United States House floor. But Charles, Angela, all these folks I seen that have been a part of my life, Carla, the work that you all do and fight, Dr. Thomas, medical leader at The Ohio State Wexner Medical Center, in this room. We would not have had that, Dr. Thomas, 30 years ago or 50 years ago. You wouldn't have had the number of white people in a room with Black people because they care. And so to you, I say thank you. Thank you for being in this fight. And I will pledge today that I will go to the United States House floor and I will quote those statistics. And I will talk about that it's more than housing, that it is about our opportunity to make America well. It is our opportunity to make sure that we tackle systemic racism because it exists. And if we all just say that and challenge something, John Lewis used to say, if you see something, say something. And I can tell you saying something makes a difference, Liz. When you go back to the YWCA and you embrace all your policies and all the hard work that you've done as a fighter in this community, thank you. We need to start bringing people together and not tearing us apart. And there's a reason I say thank you to you, because let's make a commitment that it starts with not saying what you're not doing. Well, they don't do anything. What's the mayor doing? You know, we got all these problems. You know, what's the congresswoman doing? You got more poverty than this. Well, you know, he can't change the world. Mashika can't change the world. Shayla can't change the world. I can't change the world. But together, that is the only thing, if you look at our history. 60 years in a few days, we will celebrate the March on Washington. And what was it really about? It was about housing. We will make a difference if we band together. Those that know me well know I always say, you gotta do a little old school and a little new school. Well, banding together and using our voices and marching is what will bring us together. So when you go back home to your workplace, to the comfort, think about everything that's on this board. And if we just do one thing, each of us, we can save lives. We can make sure that people can live wherever they want to live, that they can afford, and that they're not punished by the color of their skin. And lastly, I want to show you something. We were talking about this in the office the other day, and most of you are too young to know about the green books. Well, my in-laws had this green book, which is an original copy. And in this book, it would tell Black people when they were traveling across the state, what streets they could drive down, what restaurants, what hotels they could go in. And so it's very personal for me because Beatty is in this book. And I did not know that till I was just really reading this book and saw a little dot. Well, the restaurant, the Novelty Food Bar, had a room above it and people could come and stay. And in this book, it talks about, in that one line, that that was a safe haven. So when I say it's personal to me, it's personal to me that if in the 1950s, we could have places here, and there's several places in Columbus, Ohio, that said it's safe for people. So Mayor, thank you for helping us identify in this community, in Mashika and Shayla, that together we can make a redesign against redlining. Let's go from red to green lining. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Beatty. We really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. So thank you for all your support. So now I'm going to ask you to go with me on a journey. Picture all the homes in Columbus. Now imagine that some of these homes have an invisible toxin in them. These are homes where our vulnerable children are being raised. And imagine that this toxin is capable of damaging a child's brain and neurologic system, causing hearing and speech delays, and increasing antisocial behavior that can contribute to and lead to violence and incarceration. Now, I know this might sound like a horror story to some of you, but these are homes, and this situation exists right here in Columbus, Ohio in 2023. Lead can have devastating, lifelong effects on children who are exposed to it. These children are at risk because the homes that they live in are in previously red line neighborhoods where policies that were put in place decades ago still impact their health outcome today. Racial discrimination from government and bank maps long ago has led to these disparities from historical redlining and structural racism. And I'm here to remind all of you, racism is a public health crisis. Children are the future of Columbus, and some children, especially low-income children and children of color, are living in homes that are full of hazards, like lead. These houses might look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside, they are slowly poisoning our children in the comfort of their own home. We can no longer allow lead to impact our children and the future of Columbus. These children serve as canaries in the coal mine. For far too long, our current system of lead testing simply doesn't protect them until after they've been exposed to lead. Now, the unfortunate news is only about 50% of children who live in Columbus under the age of 6 are being tested and screened for lead every year. The recommendations is that a child get tested at the age of 1 and at the age of 2 at their well-child visits. But so many of our families and our children don't make it to those well-child visits, and they fall through the cracks and they don't get tested. Just in the last 8 years, there's an average of 141 children each year who end up having an elevated blood level. That's 141 when we're only testing about 50% of children who should be tested. So I ask, what if we could change the current system of lead prevention by going to where kids are and screening the houses where they live instead of waiting to test them later once they've already been exposed? Think of the difference that we could make in our community if we could find and remove this toxin, this lead, from their homes before they're ever exposed. I'm going to tell you about the difference we could make for one of our 5-year-olds here in Columbus. So this child recently went to their doctor for their well-child care. The mother had told the physician that that her child was having trouble in kindergarten, and she was quite concerned about some of the behavior that his teacher had shared with her. The physician looked in the child's record and, sure enough, realized that the child had never been tested for lead because they hadn't come to their well-child visits. The physician tested the child, and, not surprising, the child had an elevated lead level. Cognitive development is complex, but we know there are things we can do that are effective and meaningful, but they often get lost in our current approach to healthcare delivery. So we all must ask ourselves, what could have been done to prevent this harmful exposure that impacted this child's ability to learn and to excel in the future? Well, today I am proud to announce Healthy Children in Safe Homes by 2040. This is a new health equity initiative that is being led by Columbus Public Health that will hopefully prevent this young boy, as well as all of our youth here in Columbus, from being lead poisoned by 2040. This initiative is about health. This initiative is about equity. Lead exposure disproportionately impacts children of color who are living in previous redline neighborhoods, where houses are older than 1978 when the federal government banned the use of lead paint. Protecting children from exposure to lead is as important as lifelong good health. Even low levels of lead in blood have been shown to negatively impact a child's intelligence, ability to pay attention, and academic achievement. The bottom line, no level of lead is safe for our children. Lead exposure in children is difficult to see. Most children have no obvious indication that they've been exposed to lead. And the health impacts often aren't noticed until it's too late and until the child is older. The negative impact of lead on our children is not only felt by the kid, the child, their family, but our entire community. Studies have shown that children who have been exposed to lead have a 9-point drop in IQ. We also know that many children in our community have trouble passing the 3rd grade reading exam. And we also know that there's a decrease in the number of gifted children. These children that I'm referring to, they're our future doctors, teachers, police officers, lawyers, and scientists that our community so desperately needs. And they are slowly and silently being poisoned right in the comfort of their own home. So ask yourself, why would we wait until a child is 1 or 2 years of age to test them if they've been exposed to lead, when we can ensure from the beginning that they're living in a lead-free, safe home? As a community, we simply must do more to protect our vulnerable children. The Healthy Children and Safe Homes by 2040 initiative will do just that by focusing on 4 key areas to prevent lead exposure from happening in the first place. First, we're going to increase screening and testing in our community, which will include testing more kids, as well as, for the first time ever, proactively screening homes for lead in these high-risk neighborhoods. We will work with our WIC program, our immunization clinic, as well as our home visiting program to find more kids and test kids where they are. Second is education and outreach. We must educate and engage the community about lead and lead prevention. So, we've learned so much from the pandemic. We learned firsthand how to get the message out to vulnerable populations. We're going to take those lessons learned from the pandemic and apply that to lead by working with schools and neighbors and churches and getting messages that resonate to those populations and get them out in the community. And third, we're going to focus on workforce development and giving community members the skills they need to help reach our goal. This effort will support the city's Department of Development in remediating the most lead-burdened houses that need intensive repairs. And we will fund training and certification to create a skilled workforce for repairs. And finally, we will include lead hazard repairs and remediation. We will create a repair fund for high-risk, high-friction surfaces like doors and windows, which are often the sources of lead exposure in the homes of these young kids. Now, I'm going to admit to you, this is a heavy lift. It's a heavy lift for Columbus Public Health. It's a heavy lift for our community, but it's a lift that has to be done. The good news is Columbus Public Health is already doing some of this work, and we stand ready to do more. We stand ready to do more education and outreach. We stand ready to start doing lead testing, and we stand ready to start doing lead screenings in homes. We also have several partners, many of which are in the room today, who are already doing this work with us. Nationwide Children's Hospital has been a great partner, and we appreciate their support. And including that are the city departments of Neighborhood, Public Utilities, Department of Development, and Building and Zoning have all been helping us and will continue to help us do this good work. But we can't do it alone. Beginning in October of this year, we will launch Healthy Children and Safe Homes by 2040 in 3 high-risk, historically red-line communities in our city. These communities already have some infrastructure in place to make sure we have an impact and we can make progress fast. So those 3 areas include the Near East neighborhood, including the Livingston Avenue corridor, Greater Linden, as well as the South Side. In those 3 neighborhoods, we estimate about 7,500 kids who are under the age of 6 live in those neighborhoods. Now that only represents about 10% of children in Columbus who are under the age of 6. And we also estimate there are about 24,000 high-risk residencies in those neighborhoods that will need to be screened. This initiative will not only close the gap through universal testing of all of these children, but it'll screen their homes over the next 5 years to remove lead hazards before they have an opportunity to poison our kids. Now, this is a bold and collaborative initiative, but our community is used to bold and collaborative initiatives. But bold and collaborative initiatives require bold investments by our community. Our anticipated cost over the next 5 years is $44 million. These estimated costs break down by the 4 targeted areas. Today, I am pleased and honored to announce we already have a $10,000 commitment from the Columbus Metropolitan Housing Authority. And I want to personally thank their CEO, Charles Hillman, for stepping up and for challenging all of you to join him in this support. So thank you, Mr. Hillman. We also have an additional $7 million in federal and state dollars that will go directly to this effort. But we need more help to really make a difference. Columbus Public Health has a fund at the Columbus Foundation for this critical health equity work. I ask you to join us with your own contributions to help us reach this goal and help us become a lead-free community. You have the power, you can protect the children and ensure that every child lives in a safe home. You and the organization you represent today have an opportunity to positively impact the lives of children, their families, and the future of our entire community through healthy children and safe homes by 2040. You are leaders. We are all leaders. We all have the power to ensure that no child in our community is poisoned by lead. So it's up to me, it's up to you, it's up to all of us. We must work together, we must come together and do everything we can as a community to make sure that all children, no matter what they look like, no matter what their race and background, live in a safe and affordable home here in Columbus, Ohio. So I challenge all of you, let's step up for our kids, let's step up for the future of our community. Enough is enough. Thank you.
Up here. Hello, everyone. My name is Tuesday Ryan Hart. It is lovely to be with you today. I am going to move us through some conversation about what we just heard. Because as Congresswoman Beatty said, stories are what help us make a difference, right? We've got all sorts of data and information, and some of you will know about that data, information, knowledge, wisdom pyramid, right? We go from data, there's a lot of it out there. We get the information, we see it. It becomes knowledge when we begin to talk about it and integrate it with each other. Share our stories, say how it's meaningful, and then it becomes wisdom when we act on it, right? When we learn from what we've done and then do something different. And so we'd like to move into both knowledge and wisdom today. The goal is for us to take action leading out of this room. And to do that, we have to be connected with each other. We have to learn about each other. We have to hear each other's stories. And so we're going to just start by everyone learning a little bit about who's in this room. So, and this is just a raising hands kind of thing. So if you have lived in the Columbus area 20 plus years, raise your hand. Okay, all right, so we've got some deep experience here. 10 to 20 years. Okay, 5 to 10 years, 1 to 5 years, okay. Anyone here less than a year? Okay, the 1 to 5 years, put your hands up again. Let's give them a round of applause and welcome them to our community. Thank you for being here. We heard that we need the old timers and the new timers. So we need it all here today. So let's talk about where you came in from today. So we're talking again about the Columbus area. Did you come from kind of the central part of the city? Anyone raise your hand? Okay. How about the north side? South side? East side? Ish. We're just getting a little west side. Okay, all right. So again, as we start to tell stories, we're from many different parts. I'm going to ask you a little bit about, just so we get a little deeper in our history, where did you grow up? Did you grow up in a city? If you grew up in a city, raise your hand. Okay. If you grew up in the suburbs, raise your hand. How about any country folks? We got any country folks? Rural? Okay. All right. Now I'm going to ask you about your age, but I'm not going to ask, it's not going to be 45 to 60, nothing like that. I'm going to ask you where you first heard your music, right? Was it on vinyl? The music that moves you. Did you hear it first on vinyl? Okay. All right. How about a 8-track or cassette? All right, okay. CDs were where you found your groove. Okay, how about MP3s? That was a moment, and now we're streaming. Anyone? Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so a little bit there. And then finally, I want to know, because redlining is such a specific, to the U.S. issue, and it didn't necessarily only happen here, but as we've learned, it happened here, and in some ways it was born even here in Columbus, Ohio. How many of you were born and raised in the Midwest? Anyone say not Midwest, but the U.S.? Okay. Anyone Canada? Okay. Mexico? Europe? Any place else? Okay. All right. So for most of us, redlining has been our reality for all of our lives, right? And we can say that we weren't around when the decisions were being made, and that's true. But just like everything else, it may not be our fault, but it is our responsibility. And that's what we're here to talk about today. How do we actually take this responsibility on in a real way? Most of us actually want, we hear things like racism is a public health issue, and we think, yes, we have to do something about it. And many times we're unclear. Do we have a conversation? What does that mean? Obviously, where we vote, where we eat, where we live, how we spend our money is part of combating racism. But what this opportunity is we can actually take on a tangible issue. Lead it does not get more tangible than that. And so if we say we want to address racism, CPH has given us a place to start, to actually put our action behind our commitment. And most of us are committed. As we've heard, collaboration will be key. There is no way one group of people can do it all. We have to work together. So we're going to even start that today by turning to table conversations, right? Where we begin to talk about what is it you do? How do you see it? What do you think? And some of these conversations might be uncomfortable because this issue is unapologetically about race. That is what is happening. And so to deal with issues of race, we must be in cross-racial conversation, and we must be in cross-racial collaboration, and we must take cross-racial action together. And so we're going to be in table conversations where we begin to talk about that today. And so allow yourself to get a little uncomfortable. The goal is not for us to agree at all, right? There are probably 76 right ways for us to begin to work on lead together. We've got some ideas. Let's add more ideas and let's do them all, right? Issues that are complex like race mean we have to do all the things from different perspectives and try it out. We are not living in a country, and in fact, there isn't a place that has figured out race and racism. So why don't we do that here, right? The mayor said, we're going to do that here. Often when we think about that, we think, okay, so how do we all kind of come to agreement and then do the 5 steps and then it'll be solved? That's actually not how it works. How it works in complexity, when you're talking about complex issues, is we disagree with each other and we figure out a way to step forward, we learn, we see something new together, we might still disagree, we take a step forward and we learn, right? So we want all of your ideas here today. We are not trying to land on the truth. We are trying to land on what we are willing to do to start to take this on in a meaningful way, right? We've got concrete action. We've got lots of different viewpoints. We welcome those viewpoints. We're moving from data and information to knowledge, so we encourage you to bring your viewpoint. I mean, respectfully, right? Like this, we want to do this together, but to bring your different viewpoints and make something perhaps that none of us saw when we walked into this room. And allow yourselves to be in the complexity of it, right? This isn't a simple problem. It won't have simple solutions. We'll have to be uncomfortable. We're dealing with something from the past that is active today and is absolutely going to shape our future, right? We can't forget about the past, present, or the future as we're in these conversations. We can't oversimplify. We can't pretend this isn't about the hard issue of race. But we do actually have something concrete on the table that we can take action on today. So, without further ado, let's get into those conversations. You have someone from Columbus Public Health at your table. If folks will raise their hands. Great. These are your table hosts. They're here to welcome you and make you feel great about things and help you with your conversation. So don't worry about taking notes unless you want to. We've got someone from CPH at your table to do that. And so I'm going to ask for the first slide to be put up. Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. So this room is obviously made for singing. If you can hear me, raise your hand. If you can hear me, raise your hand. If you can hear me, raise your hand. Usually people stop talking. Thank you. If you can hear me, very first conversation at your table.
Tuesday a round of applause, please. Well, once again, I am inspired by the passion and energy I see and feel in this room today, the robust conversations, and how we can all come together to address racism as a public health issue really means a lot to me, obviously. As a community, we have this unique opportunity right now and the responsibility to make sure that all children are healthy and live in safe homes. I look forward to working together with all of you as we try to address this issue and move this project forward. And today, I'm even more hopeful and inspired that we can do it. And we will do it. And we will make a difference for all of our children and for the future of our community. So I look forward to reviewing the notes. They have cleared my calendar for the rest of this afternoon to see what you all shared in your brainstorming sessions. And then we're going to summarize that, and we're going to send that out to all of you, and we're hoping to do that before the end of this week. I want to remind you, though, there is an opportunity for any of you to donate if you want to our fund at the Columbus Foundation. You all should be receiving a one-pager as well as a note card with some basic information of how to ask more questions if you have it and how to donate to our fund. This does conclude our call to action today. I appreciate all of you for coming, taking time out of your busy day to share your thoughts, your ideas, and to hear about this new initiative that Columbus Public Health is very proud to announce today. On behalf of our community, I really want to thank you, but really on behalf of our children, on behalf of our future, I want to thank all of you for coming today, sharing your ideas, and for all the work that we're going to do together in the future. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.